It is so insane to me that the cheapest breakout Furno on Bricklink in the United States is $25, and it's not even new, it's used, plus that doesn't include shipping. Now, I don't really care if this is your favorite Furno, who also happens to be the worst version of the Hero Factory agent. If you like him, you like him, more power to you. But there are people out there who have or would be willing to spend $25 on that set, even if they have no interest in him. Why? Because many out there want to finish their collection of Hero Factory sets. I'm no stranger to collection, as I basically bought every bionicle set from both G1 and G2, and I'm willing to admit there are a ton of sets I own that I have no real interest in, who are just sitting in boxes. When I collected every set, I did it at a time when they were a whole lot cheaper than now, but seeing how prices for sets still haven't reverted back to pre-COVID days, it probably means they're not going to be affordable to buy en masse anytime soon. That being said, I still do want to collect Hero Factory sets I find cool, as the theme does hold a special place for my childhood. Hero Factory was the first theme I bought on my own. Not having to ask my parents to buy me the new sets felt good, and meant I could get what I wanted when I had the money. I remember when I finished buying every breakout set, including Furno. Even though I do plan on buying a few, I have one goal in mind for every set I buy. I want to revamp it. If you follow this channel, you probably know by now how much I enjoy revamping sets. It's one of my favorite forms of mocking because how fun it is to translate standard builds into my own custom designs. Something about problem solving and making custom torsos and limbs is really neat and definitely helps my mocking skills grow, and it could do that for you too. One of the first Hero Factory sets I bought for revamping was Bulk and Vapor. Back in August, I saw an auction on eBay for the set, and I was able to snatch it up for a little less than 40 bucks, which is good for me because the set can go for almost twice as much these days. It arrived within the week, and it wasn't until October that I decided to finally open the package to start building. And had I not been missing some parts, the build would have taken only a week, but it ended up taking an hour or two a day, stretched out for 3 weeks to build, with me slowly adding and subtracting certain parts of the mock until I finally arrived here. Here we have both Bulk and Vapor reimagined, both being a tad bit bigger than the originals. There were many changes I wanted to make from the originals, and we'll start with the revamps that I made with our hero Bulk. With the original set in mind, there wasn't much I wanted to fix to begin with. Honestly, the biggest change I felt necessary to make was the lack of leg articulation. In the original set, I could excuse the heroes not having any arm or leg articulation. The team obviously intended the heroes to have a size difference compared to the villains, and I like that. I always say I love when the heroes and villains in a story have a significant size difference, and with the first wave villains, I felt it just added more to the stake of the Hero Factory story. Since CCBS wasn't out yet, they instead made similar limbs to that of the Avmatorn and Agori of the previous years, which worked well in keeping the heroes smaller. However, I knew I was going to make Vapor bigger, so I added a simple small CCBS limb and attached it to his lower leg build that was basically just comprised of the cool Wave 1 Hero Factory leg armor. This allowed me to keep using the piece. I then figured out how to turn it into the lower leg. I decided to also give him posable arms too, that basically just use the 2 guns included with him as a frame. The arms don't do much, but I felt it would look better than nothing like the original set, as it allowed him to pose his gun even further than before. Then the rest of his body is basically the same as the set. The only difference is I ran the orange tube down his torso. I like the way the ribbed hose looked poking slightly out from the sides of Bulk, making it look like some sort of inner tubing was exposed, possibly to prevent overheating or something. His jetpack is upside down because that's how it was when he arrived, so I decided to keep it that way and instead act as if the jetpack was some sort of fuel storage tank, and I added a Mystica engine to the bottom to act as a thruster. This jetpack build I felt made him more unique than just using a simple Avmatorn jetpack. Overall, he was fun to build, but honestly, he probably only took an hour or two to build. I didn't really put much thought into him. Now we have the big baddie himself, Vapor. And when I got him, I didn't realize how bad he looked. Almost incomplete, really. For starters, the hodgepodge of different orange and silver sprinkled throughout his build didn't complement his cool black and blue color scheme, and on top of that, the lack of articulation in his arms felt really dumb. And he isn't the only villain to suffer from this either. Von Nebula, the flagship set from the first wave, has this problem too. It's strange to see LEGO go back on old ways when they figure out something, like how to give their sets arm articulation. Seriously, they figured it out in 2003. There's nothing wrong with just slapping on a standard NECA arm here, set designers. So yeah, I had my work cut out when I designed my version of him. I knew I had to really fix the shortcomings of the original set here, and I'll start by talking about his legs. I didn't want to use standard Paraka feet like the original, as I didn't feel they could support what I was trying to do, so I replaced them with Anua Masters of Stone's feet, and added some Exoforce arms as fingers so I could get the same claw look. Then I attached a blue bionicle hand to the back of his feet and a piston because he definitely would need the leg support. His lower legs are a simple build really. They're basically just the Exotoa's lower legs, but I decided I wanted to cover the gap with a Lord of Skull spider foot to block out the middle. I think it worked pretty well here, and man is this piece useful for mocking. Anyways, the thigh is pretty simple. I decided to use some spare Karpar armor in blue that I had. I got these pieces from a lot of parts I got a long time back, and I felt I could finally use them for a LEGO build that would actually look good. I used a thick slicer foot to fill out some of the gap left behind by the blue armor underside, and it's all held together by a black 3-long axle with a stop. I bought 100 of them in black from AliExpress a while back because I damn well knew I wasn't going to use a brown legit one. I wanted to keep this build as black and blue as I could. The supports are held in with cut black Star Wars lightsabers. I didn't use 2 long axles in black because they stuck out too much. Overall, I really like how the legs turned out, and they help support this top heavy mock pretty well. Next we have the lower part of the torso, and I really just wanted to see how much Technic I can add here to hide the simple yet very effective Vaki lower torso. But not only did I use Technic because, as you can see, I added some normal system LEGO to fill out some gaps here and there, like these Exoforce arms or this black long slope piece for the middle, which happened to fit perfectly inside this LEGO sports hockey player foot to kind of continue the sort of downward slope in the middle. You may also notice I use Vapor's torso armor here. It looks really good in my opinion, as it kind of reminds me of like a shell or something that can help protect Vapor from attacks from behind, and surprisingly has no effect on the mock's articulation, which is always a bonus. Then we have the upper torso, which, by the way, is just an Anika torso with a bunch of greeble added to it. Like, for example, this Ben 10 claw that helps add to his chest a bit, and in the middle there's 2 LEGO slope pieces. I feel this helps continue the slope thing going on with his lower torso. Speaking of which, I had to include waist articulation because I try to do that with every build. Though the movement of the torso was stuck with it only being able to go up and down, as I added some supports to connect the upper and lower torso and prevent the build from flopping over. One big problem I had with the torso was how gappy it was in the chest. So to help fix this, I added a blue ribbed hose here because in the original he had an orange one and I felt that clashed too much with his color scheme, so I kept it blue to match him a bit more. I like to imagine they carry water throughout his body to help cool down his inner workings. I also utilized a bunch of these Lord of Skull spider feet to give him more of a spiky look, and also to help armor him up from the top a bit more. In the back, I also added a bunch of the Lord Skull spider legs to continue the thorn look. In a way, he looks similar to Sonic the Hedgehog's side profile, or Dragon Ball character Raditz you could say. I even added an Anika torso armor to his back to help beef him up a bit more, and some tires between the thorns on his back to cover up some of the gaps. By the way, his head still has great articulation, and it's barely limited by the changes. Overall, the most fun was building the entire torso, and definitely way more fun than the arms. Speaking of the arms, I realized building arms are just not my strong point, so I fell back on old designs, just a simple CCBS armor with a shell, and a shoulder armor piece. The shoulder armor was bought off AliExpress. I got 10 for $3. Bricklink tends to be way more expensive for the same piece, so I decided just to buy this GoBrick knockoff. By the way, if anybody from GoBricks is watching, I'm ready for that sponsor video. I have a really good idea for it. But yeah, not really anything notable about the arms. And you may notice I used the blue Batman spikes instead of the Croter blades in blue that came with the base set. I really tried to get them to work here, but they just wouldn't fit the arm design that I had in mind. So I went for a custom and bit more organic look, and I think it looks even better. And on top of that, I could use the spare blue corroder blades on another build in the future. I kept his weapon the same for the most part, just replacing some things here and there, and even added this red lightsaber to his gun scope so that he could use it for long distance targets. I'd like to imagine he uses his new scope with red laser to shoot down Hero Factory standard dropships and merchant ships to rob and murder. Overall, this was really fun to build, and a bit frustrating when it came to translating and modifying the build. Also, the fact I didn't have enough of some of the parts and had to go out and buy some more was kind of annoying, and I found myself compromising some of the original ideas I had. so I wouldn't have to go out of my way to buy extra stuff. Overall, the main takeaway from this video should be to adopt quality over quantity when it comes to buying Bionicle and Hero Factory sets, with LEGO not making G1 or G2 Bionicle or any Hero Factory sets for that matter anymore, and the prices continuing to go up on the secondhand market. I think it might be time to start holding off on just finishing collections and instead start collecting only the sets you really want and having fun with them by upgrading and revamping them, instead of just letting them sit on a shelf or in a box. Take it from the guy who has almost every Bionicle set. It's just not economically sound these days. Sorry to end it off in such a downer, it's just the truth. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Consider subscribing and joining the Discord. I'd really like to see what you build and come up with yourself. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.